My parents abandoned me and now demand that I support my divorced sister, as is the duty of her rich big brother. So I am the middle child between an older brother who is 6 years my senior and a younger sister who is 10 years my junior. My parents are now in their late 60s and early 70s, and looking back, my position in the family has always been a bit shaky from a young age. I got the vibe from my mom that my arrival was a bit of a surprise. No, not the good kind of surprise, more like the oops kind of surprise. She never said outright that she regretted having me, but her hints weren't exactly subtle, dropping comments here and there about how I was unplanned and how my coming into the world made things a bit harder for them. Imagine hearing that as a kid. That's not exactly a self-esteem booster, right? Then there was my older brother. This guy was my hero. He was tall, strong, and just exuded confidence. He stood up for me against bullies, and sometimes those bullies were even our own parents, which is as fucked up as that sounds. He knew how to deal with them and protect me from their often harsh criticism. He was also incredibly handsome, excelling in sports and popular, excelling in sports throughout high school and college. He had this charm about him that drew people in, and some even said that he looked like a very young Marlon Brando to me. He was the definition of what a man should be, everything that our dad unfortunately was not. Our dad could be quite harsh, petty, and manipulative at times, which really distorted my view of what fatherhood should be like my brother, though he showed me kindness and taught me how to be a good person. Showed me kindness and taught me how to stand up for myself. He was protective but also made sure I knew how to protect myself, which was invaluable growing up the way we did as adults. Looking back, I can see that my parents were pretty flawed as a kid, although you just feel like you're the problem. My brother wasn't perfect academically. He was a straight C student, and musically, let's just say he wasn't going to be the next Mozart. Nevertheless, my parents threw resources at him, hoping that he would somehow turn into a scholar-athlete-musician super combo. They enrolled him in piano and violin lessons, which he hated, but they were determined. When I showed a genuine interest and aptitude for the piano, my brother was the first to suggest that maybe they should let me take the lessons instead. But of course that suggestion fell on deaf ears. My musical education had to be self-funded when I was an adult. As an adult, and now I play part-time at a local bar. My brother noticed this disparity and actually used his own money to treat me on my birthdays to make sure I felt special, at least for one day that meant the world to me. When my little sister was born, I was about in the 5th grade, and it was clear that I was more of an inconvenience than ever. It felt like I was living out the Jan Brady middle child stereotype, constantly trying to be noticed and validated. My parents didn't hesitate to pull out all the stops for my brother's college education, covering what his athletic scholarship didn't, while I felt like I had to excel at everything just to earn a fraction of that. I became an overachiever, always striving for the best grades and accolades, hoping that maybe, just maybe, they would see me the way they saw him. Long story short, my brother was jogging for exercise one night and a drunk driver hit and killed him in a crosswalk. I was devastated, of course, as were my parents. My parents took out a lot of their frustration and grief on me, never ceasing to insinuate and remind me that I could never replace my brother. That I could never replace my brother. That I was inferior to my brother. Why are they stuck on me? This is not the adult bitter me telling things in my favor. This is me after years of therapy looking back calmly and rationally. My parents instilled in me the idea that they wished that if one of us had to die, it could have been me and not my brother. I was also moderately overweight and short as a teenager, and this made me feel even worse. It didn't help that my father always compared me unfavorably to my brother in terms of height and athletic ability. Your brother was 6 feet 3 inches when he was your age. Gee, thanks for that helpful advice, Dad. I'm gonna have a talk with my legs and tell them to stop being so short, because as you know, my genes are my fault and not yours. When it came time for me to go to college, nothing from my parents, no offer to pay, no offer to help, no praise for my perfect grades, no praise for the fact that I had won numerous awards in high school for science and engineering. They never attended any of my ceremonies and only attended my graduation, and even then reluctantly, it seemed. Their only comment was the passive-aggressive observation that I was only the salutatorian and not the valedictorian. I had never once in my entire academic career gotten less than an A for any academic or elective grade from kindergarten through 12th grade. I got perfect grades in college too, so I didn't need their help to pay my way through school. I was offered several full-ride scholarships both in and out of state. When I said I wanted to take a scholarship across the country, my parents just shrugged. No comments. Likio, stay close to us. We want you close to home. We'll miss you. So I thought effort and Blue City. I worked at a Rite Aid drugstore to supplement my scholarships. I majored in aerospace and minored in physics all through college. I made the effort to visit my parents on holidays, but I could tell I was just as meaningless. To them, as I always was by the time I started graduate school, also full ride scholarship. I just said to all of them and stopped calling. I could see once again how much I mattered to them because they never once tried to call me after that, or at least until recently. I've been working in aerospace for 17 years now. I make well over $200,000 a year. I own my own house, 2 luxury cars, an RV and a motorcycle, and I've been married for almost 20 years to a beautiful woman, 40, who chose me before I was even close to having those things, and who has her own career in literature. From my own experience with my parents, I know exactly what not to do with my children. My sister got married at 19 to a guy I privately thought was a loser and a user. My parents spared no expense for her lavish wedding. At the time, I was not in my current strong financial position. I attended the wedding and everyone was just as cold to me as I remember them. No one congratulated me on being fully grown. I hit my growth spurt at 20 and was over 6 foot tall and now very slender and fit. Oh well, I gave my sister $5,000 as a present. I also had a chance to play the piano at the wedding because my sister asked me to after a family friend noticed that I had mentioned taking private lessons. Everyone was thrilled with my playing and patted me on the back. Not a peep from my parents. Of course, my sister has a 6-year-old daughter. Sister divorced her husband. Of course, my sister has a 6-year-old daughter. My sister divorced her husband 2 years ago because, surprise, surprise, he was a loser and a user and completely useless. He won't give her child support because he has no money. So my sister moved back home with my parents. She wants to go back to school. She had a degree in modern art that my dad paid for, but she never got a job with it, and now she doesn't think she can get a good paying job with it unless she adds onto it or gets another degree. And now my parents suddenly remembered my phone number. They didn't say so, but from what I can tell, they have been blowing all their money indulging her and their own tastes. They regularly go on lavish vacations, so now they think it is my duty as her rich big brother to step in and pay. My mom says it would be classy for me to offer to pay since my sister is in college. My mom says that it would be classy of me to offer to pay since my sister could really use the money and I didn't spend much time with her when she was young because you moved out so early. Okay. She also says that now that she and my dad are getting old, it is a shame that I hardly visit and they are confused as to why I am so arrogant and don't see them more often. Total gaslighting. I have noticed that my dad has nothing to say about any of this because he knows what the real deal is. He told me that my brother was always ashamed of me shortly after my brother died. And this was after my brother had told me to my face a few weeks earlier that he would always be there for me, and that he loved me, and that no one would ever hurt you if I stood up for myself. And in a way, my brother's been with me my whole life. I am inspired by him when I want to succeed. My dad is a jerk. The thing is, I know my parents are full of crap, but I don't want my niece to suffer. She's the same age group as my own kids, and I hate the idea of her going without. I've never had a bad relationship with my sister, but she takes after my parents, and is something of a self-involved narcissist. I am financially in a position to help pay, but I dislike the way they have all treated me since I was a boy, and my own kids will be in college in a blink of an eye. Also, who knows, maybe I could get fired tomorrow and this whole lifestyle will come crashing down. Under what terms should I offer money? Should I offer any at all? If not, how can I help in other ways? Now for the top comments before the update. It is a shame for your sister and your daughter, but theirs is a shame for your sister and her daughter, but their situation is a result of your sister's bad life choices. It is not your job to bail them out of these problems. You need to set a limit here because it is not going to stop with this money. I suspect it will be your sister's college. Then she will need money for her own home. Then your parents will start to suffer as they get older and they will need something. And of course you are a terrible son if you refuse to pay. Son, if you refuse to pay for it, and so on and so on. You've got 2 kids of your own to take care of. And while you've built an enviable life for yourself, you're not exactly a millionaire, so take care of your own wife and kids first. Update 1. It all started last Sunday. I was kicking back, planning to catch up on some Netflix when my phone rang, and when I saw it was my parents, I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. I answered, trying to keep my tone light. Hey, what's up? Right off the bat, my mom went into her usual guilt trip mode. You know, it's been ages since you last visited, we're not getting any younger. She started laying the groundwork for whatever was coming next. I played it cool. Yeah, work's been crazy busy, you know how it is. Without missing a beat, she dove right in. Right? I blinked, totally caught off guard. What money was I asking for? Trying to keep the surprise out of my voice. Well, you know she wants to go back to school, and since you've done so well for yourself, it would be really classy of you to offer. She explained as if this was a perfectly normal request. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Why am I suddenly responsible for funding her education? You're her big brother, and you weren't around much when she was growing up. It's the least you could do, she continued, her voice taking on that familiar tone of expectation. My frustration began to boil over. Mom, get one thing straight. My being away was because I had to make something of myself on my own, because I sure as hell didn't get any help from you. There was a pause, and then my dad's voice came on the line. Heavy and annoyed. Look, we're not here to rehash the past. We're talking about your sister needing help. needing help or you needing me to help because you've mismanaged your priorities and finances. I shot back, my patience was wearing thin. The argument heated up from there. My mom threw in everything from how I've always been too ambitious for my own good to how I've given up on myself. My dad wasn't much better, throwing in a dig about how I've always been too concerned with money, and that being financially responsible isn't a crime. I countered that I felt like I was talking to a brick wall, and that using my success as an excuse to guilt me into opening my wallet wasn't going to work. This time, the call ended pretty much as expected, with no resolution and a lot of angry hang-ups. UPS. After I put the phone down, I was left shaking, a cocktail of anger and old resentment swirling inside. The same old story, just a different day. I tried to calm down by going for a walk, letting the cool air clear my head. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this was just another manipulation tactic, another way for them to pull me back into the old dynamics where I was the perpetual giver and they were the takers. Now I'm stuck on one hand trying to figure out what to do next. I really don't want my niece to suffer or miss out on opportunities because of her parents' or grandparents' problems. She's just a kid and doesn't deserve that. But on the other hand, I'm tired of being seen as an ATM, valued only for what I can give financially. Should I just give the money and keep the peace, set some strict limits on it, or refuse outright and try to help in other ways that don't involve just handing over cash? Maybe there's a way to support my niece? Directly bypassing my parents and sister altogether. It's a tough spot to be in, and I'm really torn about the best way to handle it. If anyone out there has been through something similar or has any pearls of wisdom, I'm all ears. Sometimes just talking it out or hearing someone else's take on it can make a huge difference. Here's hoping I can find a solution that doesn't leave me feeling like I've compromised my own values or let down someone who needs help. Update 2. So my sister called me, and honestly I was expecting I got a call from my sister, and honestly I was expecting another round of the Guilt Olympics, but what I got instead threw me for a loop. I picked up the phone and it was my sister, who sounded different, like more calm and real than usual. Hey, I heard about the talk you had with Mom and Dad. I just wanted to say, if you're feeling weird about giving the money, you really don't have to. I don't want to push you into anything. I was kind of stunned. That wasn't the conversation I was expecting to have. Really, that's not what I was expecting to have. I was really expecting that. Thanks for saying that. It's a lot to process, Yeah, I get it, she said, and I could almost picture her nodding on the other end. I should have talked to you directly before letting Mom and Dad handle it. Sorry for the drama they stirred up. We talked more and she shared how she felt stuck and thought maybe asking for financial help was the only way out. But now she saw things a little differently. Thanks to our chat, it was probably the most honest and open conversation we'd had in a long time. Thanks for being understanding. It means a lot, I told her, feeling a weird mix of relief and disbelief, of course. And hey, maybe we can find something else, something that doesn't make you uncomfortable. She suggested we end the call on a good note, something I hadn't expected but definitely appreciated. I hung up feeling lighter, but also a little confused about what to do next. Later that night, after the kids were tucked in and the house was cleaned, tucked in and the house was quiet, I sat down with my wife to unpack the whole thing. We settled into our comfy couch with some tea, the kind of setup that says it's time for a serious chat. So my sister called. I started. She said, I don't have to give the money if I'm not comfortable with it. That's good, right? My wife said, sipping her tea thoughtfully. It sounds like she's really trying to respect where you're coming from. Yeah, that's good. It's just now I'm wondering if there's a way to help that. I fiddled with my cup, thinking out loud. My wife set her cup down and gave me that look that says she's about to drop some wisdom. If you decide to help, just make sure it's on your terms. You could make sure the money is used for what it's meant to be used for, like putting it directly towards her school expenses or setting it up as a loan instead of just giving it away. That's a really good point. I nodded, feeling grateful for her level-headedness. I don't want to just open up my checkbook without some boundaries, which wouldn't help anyone in the long run. We talked for a while, exploring different ideas of how I could offer support without feeling like I was just caving into pressure. Maybe setting up a trust for her education would work, I suggested. That way the money would be tied up for its intended purpose and there would be no way for it to be misused or diverted elsewhere. That sounded like a solid plan. My wife agreed with a smile. You would be helping in a way that was constructive and keeps your integrity intact. This conversation with my wife was exactly what I needed. It helped me organize my thoughts and come up with a plan that felt right. Talking things through with someone who understands you can really make all the difference. So now I'm putting together some ideas on how to set up this educational trust or something like that. If any of you have been in a similar situation or have advice on dealing with family and money, especially when it comes to trusts and educational funds, I would love to hear it. These family dynamics are tricky, but I hope we're moving toward a solution that feels right for everyone. So here's to navigating the choppy waters of family relationships and coming out the other side okay. Update 3. Okay. So I thought I had finally found a good solution by setting up a trust fund for my sister's education. I was pretty proud of myself for figuring out a way to help her without just throwing money at the situation. I set everything up, talked to a financial advisor, and made sure it was all airtight. My sister was thrilled when I told her about it, and honestly, it felt great to help her out like this. But as usual with family stuff, the peace didn't last long. Long figured I should give my parents a heads up about the trust fund, hoping they'd see the sense in making sure the money was used properly. So I picked up the phone, dialed their number, and braced myself for their reaction. The call started off okay. "Hey Mom, Dad just wanted to let you know I set up a trust fund for Sis's schooling," I said. I tried to keep my tone light and positive. There was a beat of silence, and then my dad's voice came through, sounding confused and a little annoyed. "A trust fund? What for? Why didn't you just give us the money?" I explained. "It's a way to make sure the money goes directly to her school expenses." You could almost hear the temperature rise on the other end of the phone, my mother's voice tight with frustration. "We, her parents, should be handling this money. You should have given it to us." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Were they serious? Seriously, handling the money this way is better because it ensures that the money will only be used for her education, nothing else. My dad got really heated. "Then you are overstepping your bounds, thinking you can control everything with your money. We know what is best for her." The argument spiraled from there. "Overstepping? I am trying to do a good thing here. This isn't what I am doing. It's not about control. It's about responsibility," I shot back, my voice rising as I tried to stay calm. My mother accused me of not trusting her and thinking I was better than her now that I had money. "That's not your place," she said bitterly. "Trust is earned," I replied firmly. "And this is not about me showing off. It's about making sure her education is properly funded without the risk of the money going elsewhere." The conversation ended with them quite angry, and me feeling like a cross between a hero and a villain. I hung up, more frustrated than ever, but also sure that I had done the right thing. Later that evening, I went over everything with my wife. We sat in the quiet of our living room, just digesting the day. I told her about the call, about how they reacted, and how it left me with the feeling that you did the right thing. She reassured me. Her voice, calm and steady, set me up. "It protects your sister and ensures that the money is used the way you intended. Your parents are reacting out of pride and maybe a little envy." We talked a lot about what this means for us going forward, how to deal with the potential fallout, how to keep the lines of communication open with my sister, and how to handle any further conflict with my parents. "Stick to your decision," my wife advised me. "Squeeze my hand. You set this up with the best of intentions. Don't let their reaction make you doubt yourself." So here I am again in the middle of family drama, but this time with the confidence that I can handle it. This time with the confidence that I'm doing something beneficial. My parents might be upset, but hopefully they'll see the benefits in the long run. And if not, I'll just have to stand firm and know I did the right thing for my sister. Navigating family and money is super tricky, almost like trying to defuse a bomb without setting it off. If anyone out there has gone through similar stuff or has any advice on dealing with family money issues, I'd really appreciate hearing your thoughts. Sharing these experiences can sometimes help us see things from another angle and feel a little less alone in the chaos. Update 4. So, after setting up the trust fund for my sister, I'm going to be setting up the trust fund for my sister. Trust fund for my sister's education and having a really positive conversation with her. I thought maybe we were on our way to some peace, but as it turned out, the family drama was just gearing up for another round. I called my sister directly to make sure she was all set and understood how the trust fund worked. Was super thankful and really excited about it, which felt awesome. We had a great conversation, just laughing and planning her future. It was nice, like really nice to connect with her like that without any drama. But then a few days later my phone rang and I saw it was my parents. My stomach did that weird flip. I took a deep breath and answered, "Hey, what's up?" My dad was all business and a little on the attack. "We heard you set up this trust fund for your sister and talked to her about it," he started. "Yeah, I wanted to make sure she knew how it worked and that she was okay with everything." "Yeah, I wanted to make sure she knew how it was going to work and that she was okay with everything," I said, trying to keep things calm. Well, my mom cut in, her tone full of that "we're not happy. We were thinking if you can afford to do that, you should really do more, like buy her a house." I paused, totally thrown off. Buy her a house? That's a huge step. The trust is one thing. The trust is one thing, but buying a house is on a whole other level. My dad didn't miss a beat. "If you care about your sister, you're going to make sure she's completely secure. A house would do that." The conversation got pretty heated. "Look, I care about her a lot, which is why I set up the trust, but buying a house, that's a major investment, and honestly it's not something I'm ready to just jump into. I tried to explain. My mom jumped back. And you're making all this money, and you can't help your own sister more generously. We're your family, you should want to do this. I felt my frustration boil up. It's not about not wanting to help her, it's not about not wanting to help. It's about what's reasonable and what makes sense. I'm not just going to buy houses on a whim. The trust fund was already a big commitment. We're just asking you to do what's right. Asher brother, my dad argued, his voice getting louder and louder. Doing what's right and doing what you want are two different things. I shot back. I've done a huge thing for their education. I'm not adding a house to it right now. It's not feasible. The call ended pretty badly. They said I was being selfish, and I felt like I was talking to a brick wall. They were disappointed, and I was mad and stressed out. Later, I talked the whole thing over with my wife. We sat in our kitchen late at night, just trying to unwind but also figure this out. They just don't see boundaries, they think. Because I have some money, I can solve all problems with it. I told her, running my hands through my hair. You've done enough, more than enough. My wife said, her voice firm. Buying a house is not just a simple thing, it's a huge responsibility, and not something you just do because someone demands it. We talked about how to deal with my parents moving forward, how to communicate that I was happy to help my sister, but within limits that made sense, maybe just reinforcing the purpose of trust and that you're supporting my sister. We talked about how to deal with my parents moving forward, how to communicate that I was happy to help my sister, but within limits that made sense, maybe just reinforcing the purpose of trust, and that you're supporting her. I need to be clear that I'm not an ATM and I can't be guilted into making huge financial decisions like this. So that's the situation now. I'm gearing up for more discussions, or more likely arguments with my parents. I'm learning a lot about setting boundaries and sticking to them even when it's super hard. If anyone has any advice on dealing with family who think your wallet is their safety net, I'd really appreciate hearing it. Sometimes just knowing others have navigated these waters can be super helpful. Update 5. So my sister officially started college and she is over the moon. It's awesome to see her so pumped about her classes and making new friends. Every time we chat, she has a ton of stories about her professors, her coursework, and all the new experiences. Setting up that trust fund was definitely a good move. It's like I can almost hear her smiling through the phone when she talks about her day. It makes me feel like I really did something right, you know? But while that part of my life is going great, the family drama part, not so much. My parents are still super pissed off about the whole trust fund thing and the fact that I didn't buy her a sister. I didn't buy my sister a house like they wanted. And instead of cooling off, they decided to turn up the heat, bad-mouthing me to pretty much anyone in the family who will listen. According to them, I'm the cheap son hoarding his money while his family struggles, which couldn't be further from the truth. When I first heard about their little smear campaign, I was pissed off. I mean, it's one thing to be mad at me, but to spread lies, that's a whole new level of low. It's like, come on, why are we dragging everyone else into our mess? So I decided I had to clear things up. I started reaching out to some of the family members who had heard these stories. One of the first calls I made was to my Aunt Linda, who's basically the unofficial news anchor of the family. She had the scoop, all right? But it was all kind of twisted. Hey, Aunt Linda, I heard through the grapevine that I wanted to talk to you directly and explain what was really going on. I try to keep my voice calm even though I was super annoyed. Oh, hello dear. Yes, your mother mentioned that you've been a bit stingy, she said, which is a nice way of saying it. I took a deep breath, ready to dive into the whole saga. Actually, Aunt Linda, I set up a trust fund for my sister's education. It covers all her tuition, books, and any school-related expenses. It's all taken care of so she can focus on her studies without worrying about money. There was a pause on the other end, and I could tell she was processing this new information. A trust fund? Well, I didn't know about that. Your mom just said you refused to help with a house. Yeah, the house thing came up, but I felt while her education was fully funded, it was more important to buy a house. Is huge, and with the trust already set up, it seemed excessive. I explained further, hoping that she would see the sense in it. Aunt Linda seemed to soften a little, which sounds generous and reasonable. Education is a big deal, and it sounds like you've done a lot. We talked a little more, and by the end of the call, she seemed to understand my perspective a lot better. She even promised to let others know the real story, which was a relief, but despite clearing up some of the confusion, this whole thing made me realize that visiting my parents anytime soon is off the table. They've shown that they're not above bending the truth to try to guilt me into doing what they want. Later, I sat down with my wife to talk about it all. We were in our living room just winding down for the day, and I told her everything. You need to keep your peace. She said, you always know exactly what to say. If that means keeping some distance for now, then that's what you need to do. I'm keeping my distance, sticking to my guns, and focusing on the positive changes, like my sister loving college. It's hard to navigate family drama, especially when it feels like you're doing it alone, but I'm learning that sometimes you just have to stand firm and do what you think is right, even if everyone doesn't get it. If anyone out there has dealt with similar family money issues or has any tips on how to deal with family members who turn every conversation into a guilt trip, I would really appreciate hearing from you. It's comforting to know that others have walked this path and come out the other side.